Love Finance is the Other F Word and want to support the show? Pick up some merchandise at financeistheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mello is, and as wonderful an attorney as I am, please do note that anything said in our show are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Good morning, everyone. I absolutely love that song. Ozzy is not looking good. You guys, Ozzy's not looking good. I don't know if you've seen him lately. Yes, he's 74. Totally get that part. Mick Jagger's 80. Looks way better than Ozzy. Ozzy is walking with a cane now. He looks like a very old 74, which, of course, he's done enough drugs to... shouldn't have even made it to 74, but thank God he did. He's saying he's going to come out with a new album and tour again, but I think we all know that's probably not going to happen. So I just continue my visual over being terrified that he's going to go in the hospital and pass. But I love that song, Perry Mason, and I used to watch Perry Mason with my grandparents all the time because they loved that show. And in the series, the entire series, he only lost one case, and I can't remember why he lost the case, but of course, he was the hero of the show, so he won everything. I was gone last week on business. My amp is amping right now really bad, so if you guys can't hear me, please let me know, or if I go in and out. You know what, Kodak? That's very true. He says Sharon will weekend at Bernie's Ozzy until he's embalmed. Yes, Tabor, it's a good song. And okay, so real quickly, Kodak, Dream, Tabor, my girl, X, Nas, PB, if you're still in here, Graham, if you're still in here, and Leslie, good morning. This show is really, really robust. Okay, so I was gone last week for travel, and now I'm trying to get caught up with some of the stories. But the very last story is extremely, it's one of the most researched stories I've done recently because of the fact that I was just ignorant on so much stuff. So stick around if you can for the last story. It's a big deal, and I'm going to talk about some different questions that we have to continue to answer in the global economy. So let's talk about Trump real quick. I'm not talking about his criminal cases. I'm talking about his civil case that he has currently going on in New York. But the reason why I want to talk about this is because I want you guys to understand what they're specifically saying as far as from a monetary perspective. So they are accusing, I'm sure you guys all know this, the Trump organization and the Sons and Trump himself of inflating his real estate assets. And because of that, they're saying that he defrauded a lot of the institutions. Now, Trump's attorneys are saying, hey, real estate values are hard to come by and they're not always accurate, and all the loans were paid back, so he didn't do anything wrong. That's kind of the gist of their conversation. But it made me think about, I spent a lot of my time at the bank as a loan officer, so I want to explain to you guys why there is a civil case and why she is going after seeking damages, which they say that they shouldn't seek damages because he paid all of it back. You guys remember when I talked to you about mortgages multiple times, and I explained to you that jumbo mortgages, if you buy a bigger house and you spend more money, you get a better interest rate. Now, there's a couple interest rates that move around, and I've touched on them before, and I'm going to touch on them very quickly. And I understand that a lot of the terminology that I use, you're not used to hearing all of the time. But I promise you, if you stick with my show, you will start hearing these vocabulary words more and more, and they will start being relevant in the conversation. And I know there's metal shows going on. I know there's other shows that are playing all music, and the fact that you're sticking around with me, I sincerely appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. But when the Fed moves interest rates, they move the Fed funds rate, okay? The Fed funds rate is the amount that they pay for banks to put their overnight deposits. We don't need to talk about that, but just understand that when Powell raises or decreases the rate, the federal rate, he's decreasing or increasing the Fed funds rate. The Fed funds rate has a direct correlation to prime. Prime is what the very best customers of a bank get. Okay? So you and I do not get prime. All right? So if we go into a bank, this is what happens. They take prime and then they add a spread onto it. So like, let's say prime is 5%, then they will add 3%, and then they will give you a car loan at 8%. Now, let's say if prime is 5%, they will do prime minus a spread and pay you that on your savings account. So again, if the example is prime is, and this is in my book, if the example that prime is at 5%, and then they will do that minus a spread, so they'll pay you on your savings account 2.5. Okay? So the thing is that when they're adding to the top of prime, they're making money off of you. When they're lending out money to prime to their best clients, they're breaking even, but then they're making it up on the backs of us by giving us less on our savings account. Do you guys feel what I'm saying there? So when you have a client who is considered one of the best clients, who has good provable income, who has very high valuated assets, and who have certain ratios that are in check, they are going to get prime, which means that they are going to be paying, or sometimes they get prime minus a spread as well, depending on what it is. Well, when you're doing loans for the bank, you have secured and unsecured. Okay, so an unsecured loan is like your credit card, loan or line. That means you signed for it, but they can't take anything from you. Okay, unsecured. Secured would be your car loan, your house. If you don't pay them, they come take that shit, right? So when we're talking about overvaluating assets, we're talking about it fucking up a lot of ratios that underwriters use to make decisions. And the reason why the accusation against Trump in a financial context is a big deal is because in 2008, we had a whole bunch of bad loans that were written by institutions, and it almost collapsed us. Now, I'm not saying that the loans that Trump was given would be enough to collapse us. But what I am saying is that if enough people fudged their loans like they did in 2008, when we had the emergence of, in 2006, 7, well, technically the end of 2005, 6, and 7, where people flat out lied about the money they made or the assets that they had, and everybody thought the housing market was just going to keep exploding, and so they didn't really check it. What happened is so many of those bad loans got written that it literally almost collapsed us. And I know I say this all the time, but I want you to understand how close to collapse we were in 2008. This is why this is a big deal. This is why the New York Attorney General, this is why she's going after the Trump organization. Now, when you are a prime borrower, so when you are in the league of Trump and his organization where you're getting big cash loans, you have to have GAAP financial, so generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, GAAP, all right? And you present those to the underwriter, and the underwriter looks at them and then makes decisions based on that. Now, there's a lot of different ratios. If you're securing it with real estate, they want to know what the loan to value is. And I know this seems like this doesn't apply to you, but it does, because the next time you go to get a loan, these are exactly the ratios they're going to be looking at to see if they're going to approve you. So stick with me, because even though it sounds like it's going to get heavy, it's not. Once you get the terminology down, it's quite simple. Loan to value on a property is how much they're lending you versus how much the property's worth. That's it. That's your loan to value. If they're lending you $20,000 on a $100,000 property, your loan to value is 20%. Got me? Super easy. Then on top of that, there's debt to income ratios, which is just how much money you have coming in versus how much money you have going out. And that is your debt to income ratio. If you are carrying too much debt, underwriters who are underwriting your loan with the bank could say, nope, we're not going to touch you because we don't think you can pay us back. Again, the reason why this is important is because it's not just, I don't care how you feel about Trump. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I don't give a fuck. We're not talking about that right now. But what I'm telling you is that it's important to have clear, concise financial information. Now, the last 2 days, they had the accountant up on the stand, and he had a big disclosure in all of the financial statements that he provided to the bank saying, I did not evaluate this. I was given these numbers and I made the GAAP approved financial statements. Same thing your taxes person does, same thing your CPA does, is say, hey, all the information you gave me, I put it in the tax return trusting you. So if you get audited, it's on you, bro. Right? So same thing. So the accountant was basically saying, look, man, I got nothing to do with this. Me and my firm, we're out this bitch. We have nothing to do with any of this stuff. And when an underwriter is going to give you a loan, they're looking at P&Ls, profit and losses. They're looking at balance sheets. They're looking at the valuation of real estate. So let me tell you a quick story before I play my next song, because this immediately reminded me of it. And I think if you guys have been listening to my show for a hot minute, you might have heard this story, but bear with me. So at the branch I used to work at back in the day, Anya, you're going to know, there was a dentist who was down the street from us, and he was extremely successful. He had been in business for a very long time. And his admin came in and she said, hey, I need you to do this VOD. So for those of you who don't know, a VOD is a verification of deposit. It's a form that is signed by a bank official, which at that time I was considered a bank official. Wasn't getting paid like it, but I was considered a bank official as being a banker. And what you do is you fill out the form and you say, checking account has been open since such and such. This is the current balance. This is the average balance. Savings account, right? CD, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you sign and date it and they fuck off and they go get their loan. That's a VOD. Well, the legal department at Wells Fargo at the time is where I worked. They said, yeah, well, you can't do that no more, right? Because that's legally getting us in trouble. So the only thing you can do now is write a letter saying that as of today, this person has in checking this dollar amount and then this dollar amount in savings, and sign and date it, and then they fuck off with that letter. But you can't do the VOD form anymore. So the admin came in and she was very adamant about this VOD. And I was like, look, I don't know what the fuck you want me to tell you. Obviously, I didn't cuss, but I was damn close. I don't know what the fuck you want me to tell you. I can't do this. And your little bitch ass is not worth my job. So fuck off. I'm going to give you this letter or you can get nothing, right? So she took the letter. So I type it up on letterhead, sign and date it, bam, boom, she goes away. Don't hear shit about shit. 6 months later, I get a phone call from an auditor. Hey, I want to talk to you about a VOD that you signed. I was like, VOD for who? And he gives me the name. And I'm like, nope. I was like, nope, we're not allowed to sign VODs anymore. I said, why are you calling me? And he's like, well, we wrote a pretty sizable loan to this dentist and he's defaulted. And so now we're auditing his paperwork and we come across this VOD that has your signature on it that looks suspicious. And I was like, really? I was like, can you please fax that to me? So he does. And this is what they did. They took that VOD form that I told him I wasn't going to sign and complete. They took this admin bitch, took my signature, shrank it, and then pasted it within the little tiny line on the VOD. And she wrote everything else in her handwriting. First of all, she spelled my name wrong. Okay, so I'm like, yeah, okay, that's a dead giveaway. Second of all, if you look at my signature, it clearly, and she dated it because when I typed it, I typed the date and then I just signed. So she took my signature, she pasted it in this little part of the VOD. She dated it, and then like a dumbass, she put, checking account, $11,500, savings account, $15,000. First of all, nobody has even dollars in anything they have, and that's what brought it to his attention. I told the guys, look, I was like, that is my signature, but this is what I provided them. This motherfucker took my stuff, that's not how you spell my name, and basically secured the loan. Long story short, it came out that he had gotten hooked on drugs. He had an affair with this specific admin assistant who was in my office. He ended up, he got hooked on pharmaceuticals. He ended up losing his dentistry license. He also lost his marriage. And he went out of business. I have no idea what happened to the guy. But I'm still pissed about it, right? And I understand it was, bad times or, he was kind of in a bad place. I get all that, but don't bring me into that motherfucker. Fuck y'all, right? Okay, so here we go. I'm going to play a very quick Ramon song and catch up on chat. So you're right, Dream. That's the thing. I'm like, you can have anything you want, but you better not take it from me. That is my favorite line in that song. And I mean, people, look, you guys, shit happens to people all the time financially. Some of it is our own making, some of it is not our own making. And I am definitely not out of that category myself. But that enraged me so bad that I wanted to go burn down his office and piss on its ashes, right? So we have Turd Burglar, aka Phantom, in here. Nas, did I say hi to you? I don't even know. Kitty, what's going on? How are you doing this morning? Gen X, did I say hi? I don't even know. Got Eha in here, or she was in here. Am I missing somebody? If I'm missing you, please put me in chat and check my ass. Oh, okay. So Old Head was in here for a hot minute. What's going on, babe? And Toon says, what's going on? How are you doing? Oh, DL also popped in for a hot minute. Okay. So, and I already said hi to Kodak. All right. Now, let's talk about a version of the government shutdown. Then we'll play a song. Then we're going to come back and talk about UAW. Then we're going to come back and talk about the main story. So lots of shit happened. Our fiscal year for the government ended September 30th. I'm not going to rehash all that because if you've been listening to my show for any length of time, you know about this, okay? And there is a deal. So there's the government shutdowns and there's the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling is the big guy. The debt ceiling is the thing that is the biggest sticking point that caused the downgrade to the treasuries, but also is the biggest hindrance and threat to our fiscal governing, okay, the debt ceiling. Then there's government shutdowns. Government shutdowns can happen without a debt ceiling, or they can happen in tandem with a debt ceiling issue, okay? Now, in the summertime, we had a big debt ceiling issue, which caused the downgrade by Fitch of the treasuries, the U.S. treasuries. And I've already explained why that's a big deal. If you missed it, it'll come back around because they're going to keep fighting over this bullshit. So in June, they agreed, June or July, Republicans and Democrats agreed that they were going to set the debt ceiling at a certain amount of dollars and that it was going to go through 2025, and there was concessions that were made on both sides, but both sides agreed with it, okay? Now, that agreement was supposed to make the budget argument at the end of the fiscal year of September 30th easy peasy, all right? Meaning that we already agreed on a lot of stuff, so the Senate drew up the budget, they sent it to the House should have approved it, Biden should have approved it, and we should have been funded through right now, which technically we are, but not for real, okay? So what they did was and again, and I want to put this disclaimer on here because it's very important to me. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, okay? My job is not to be a political pundit. I don't give a fuck how you vote. I give a fuck how I vote. I don't give a fuck about how you vote, okay? But in this case, these are hard right conservative Republicans, okay, in the House. Now, the Republican has a very slight majority in the House. So what happened is that the Senate drew up the bills, the appropriation bills for the 12 departments. I covered that in past episodes. Again, not going to go through it again. They sent it to the House. The far right Republicans said, we don't like that agreement. McCarthy at the time was Speaker of the House, and he's like, okay, but we've already agreed on it. And Biden said, look, man, if you put anything in front of me that isn't what we agreed on, I'm going to veto it, which means it's going to have to go back down to the two houses, to Senate and the House, and they're going to have to fight it over again. But what that means for us, because all the politicians are okay, they're still getting paid. What it means for us is that we're affected, okay? Now, the hard right Republicans in the House said, we don't like the deal. And McCarthy is trying to work both sides, and he did not do it effectively. So they put a Band-Aid on it, and they funded the government through November 17th. So even though they pushed the government shutdown down the road, they didn't avert it. And I told you guys in September that I was almost certain that a government shutdown would happen. Well, now what they've done is they've kicked it down the road. However, shit has even gotten more convoluted. Remember that it is their obligation, both Republicans and Democrats, to have a budget in place by the end of the fiscal year, September 30th. Which they don't have, okay? Now, McCarthy was the House Speaker until yesterday. And he kept saying to the far right Republicans he was not going to do any kind of agreement with Biden. But then when it got down to the wire and we were about to go into a full government, well, or partial, depending on how much funding was left. Again, I covered that. He basically said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to agree to it. Well, then there's this rule in the House, and this is not my forte, but basically they forced a vote, and all of the Democrats voted to oust McCarthy, and then 8 Republicans, the hard right faction, also voted to oust McCarthy. So now there is currently no House Speaker. But this is where you should be concerned. Okay? I don't care. I'm not going to get into the nuances of why the Democrats voted him out and why the Republicans voted him out. I'm not giving 3 fucks about that. This is what I'm concerned about. If they get a hard right Republican running the House, and they put him as Speaker of the House, we are going to have a standoff going in and past November 17th. Now, the thing is that it's not about the government shutdown, which is a big deal. It is about the fact that what was partially agreed on in June and July was the debt ceiling. And we can't keep having arguments over the debt ceiling because the debt ceiling is a major threat to our fiscal health in the United States. And the thing is that is the biggest sticking point that the Republicans have, the hard right Republicans have in the House. And remember that the debt ceiling does not, they keep saying we want less spending. The debt ceiling does not allow us to spend more money. The debt ceiling allows us to raise money for things we've already incurred. Okay? So the debt ceiling is just saying, hey, we need XYZ dollars raised, and now we're going to raise it. That's it. That's it. That's what the debt ceiling does. The debt ceiling doesn't mean that all of a sudden you can bloat the budget, because the budget should already be approved. The comprehensive budget should have already, not should have, is already approved by both Republicans and Democrats. But the thing that is now a concern is that you've slapped a Band-Aid on the budget until November 17th. But if we have a House Speaker that gets in that is not willing to work with Biden, then we are going to go into we're going to be fighting over the debt ceiling again at this current time, and we're going to be in a partial or full government shutdown depending on funding, and we are still dealing with high amounts of inflation. That's how it affects you and I. Okay, I don't talk about politics for the sake of talking about politics. I talk about it in a fiscal sense of how much it is going to affect you and I. And this is why you need to watch what's going on, because depending on when they elect a House Speaker, we are going to have another issue that's going to come up. And if Biden says the same thing then that he's saying now, anything but what everybody agreed on in the summertime, he will veto, which means that this could drag out. So this is why it's important for you guys to understand what's going on with this. I am going to play actually a shorter song because I got a lot of stuff to. No, actually, I really want to play this one. I'm going to play. This is not a metal song specifically, but it is sang by one of the OG original metal singers. And last night when I was in the shower and I was thinking about the show, this song came to me and I was like, man, I haven't heard that in a long time. And even though it's mellow, I think you guys will dig it. I see SoCal just jumped into VIP. What's going on, babe? So this is In the Mood by Robert Plant. It's a very beautiful song. I absolutely love that song. I love that song so much. After I'm done with my show, I am going to be listening to it because it's just, I don't know, so smooth, and I like the crescendo of I don't even know what that is. I guess it's the keyboard playing the whole note and then just slowly getting louder. It's awesome. I can't even remember who the fuck I have and haven't said hi to. Did I say hi to Katie? I have no fucking idea. Iha, Nas, for God's sakes, you guys, I have no idea. DL, did I say hi to everybody? I don't know. Yes, so there is a lot of talk about the ineffectiveness of government, and you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And the thing is that financially, we're really, really fucked up. and it's kind of a downward trend, which leads us to our follow-up conversation on the UAW strike. So not last week because I was traveling, but the week prior, we talked about the UAW strike and how they were being very organized with the way that they were attacking things. But we also talked about how people are watching the UAW strike extremely closely. Now, unions used to be very strong, then they fell out of favor and their participation lagged. And the unions, of course, are still trying to expand into other companies. And as I've told you guys before, I'm not a fan of unions. In the context, I think they lost their way. However, there might be a revival, and the UAW strike is kind of leading the charge. So UPS was getting ready to go, I believe it was UPS, was getting ready to go on strike this summer, and they got everything agreed to, and they averted a strike, which was a really big deal. And I told you guys to watch the UAW strike because people are looking at it to test the validity of it and the strength of it. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. People say that, Biden is a union-friendly president and he's in the White House. Let's bump all that bullshit, okay? He went to the picket line, which was historic, but we also know that Trump is going to be going to the picket line too. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. They're both the same sides, different sides of the same coin. Please believe it, okay? Now, everybody is watching the strike because they want to see how successful the strike is. Now think of the context and time where we're at right now. We are coming off of COVID. Now, when we were all quarantined in our houses, we really were thinking about our job and I fucking hate this job. I would rather die than go back to this job on Monday. Maybe now I'm forced into doing a change or, hey, I'm working from home now. I'm saving gas. I'm spending more time with my dog and my kids or my cat, whatever. I like cats too. And I would really prefer to do this going forward. And obviously I can do it because I'm doing it now. So there's really no reason why I need to be coming in. That has led to, all of this is connected, you guys. That has led to partly to the drop in commercial real estate value that we've seen and how it's affecting the REITs, real estate investment trusts. I've talked about those before. Again, if you listen to my show for any amount of time, just stick with me through the jargon and you'll start picking it up and you'll understand what I'm saying. And to bring this back all the way to context to our first story about the civil lawsuit that's currently going on against Trump and the Trump Organization, Forbes 400 dropped Trump off of the list of 400 richest people. And one of the reasons why they cited it, this was just yesterday, is because he owns 30% of a property in San Francisco that all of the leases are coming back up for renewal. And the expectation is that people are not going to renew. And that's the crux of the commercial real estate. It only has value if people are willing to pay astronomical prices for being in that building. The minute that they say, fuck you guys, we're going to do it at home, or we're going to do it from our apartment, or we're going to do it from an RV in Oregon while we're traveling with our family, the minute that shifts, we start seeing valuations drop. And this has emboldened the unions, and we see that the polls that are coming out of the United States, whether you believe the validity of the polls or not, I didn't check into it, but they seem to be more favorable towards unions because at this moment in time, in this point in our history, the employees are really wanting to make change. They want better time for themselves. Now, a year... all my times are mixing. It was last year, I think it was, the engineers went on strike. The train engineers went on strike, and one of the things they wanted was sick days, okay? And they argued for a lot of better conditions, and this was a big deal. And the Biden administration stepped in, and they forced a clause that is only pertinent to the airline industry and as a secondhand notion to the train industry. And basically what the government did was they came in and they said, nope, you're not striking. That's it. You're not striking. And the reason why the Biden administration did it, first of all, it fucked them. But the reason why the Biden administration did it is because they did not want to have more pressure from inflation by having bottlenecks caused by products not being able to be delivered, thus pushing the price of the products up. And so the government stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. However, later, the engineers were able to take it offline and redo their contracts, and they were able to pick up sick days. But the point is that we've seen now a lot of little pop-up strikes as more and more people are getting emboldened. This week, it is set to, and this is what I told you, this is why people are watching the strike so much, because if it's effective, They're not going to get their pensions back, okay? They're not. But if it's effective and they can get what they're asking for, at least partially, where they feel compromised, that they feel that there was a meeting of the minds that happened, then it is going to be a major win for the unions and for the strategy that the UAW has just implemented, which we haven't really seen in recent times. So this week, 75,000 workers at Kaiser Permanente, which I know I said it wrong, but they're a big healthcare organization. If you guys have heard of Kaiser, or you might have Kaiser Healthcare, that's who we're talking about, are threatening to go on strike. And they are trying desperately to get a compromise going. And this is a big fucking strike. And it would affect dozens of facilities, primarily in California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. And it would include in the strike nurses, therapists, technicians, dietary services, maintenance, and janitorial staff, which seems like it's not a big deal until you realize these people work at hospitals, which you kind of got to have clean, right? And sterile. And they are set to walk out if there is not an agreement that is made. Now, at the time of me sitting here right now recording this live with you, I have no idea where they stand with that. But as of yesterday, they were still in negotiations and the threat was very much still looming. We've also seen that there's been other strikes with non-teaching staff in the LA school district. We've seen nurses in New York have strikes. We've seen Starbucks, which the union has been after Starbucks very hard and heavy to get them to unionize. So we see that certain areas of Starbucks have walked out for 3 days and then came back basically saying, hey, we want to unionize and you're not listening to us. But what's happening is there's a renaissance in the unions. And so even if you're not part of the UAW, or even if you don't like unions, or even if you don't blah, 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 right? Understand that this strike going on is important because of the symbolism. It's early, you guys. Symbolism of what is going on with this. Now, if in the event, and please believe that all the C-suite executives in all of these corporations that are union or that are close to being unionized are watching this strike extremely tightly. And no doubt they are calling their other C-suite friends at GM and Ford and saying, hey, you can't bend to them, because if you do, it's going to look like a victory. And then what's going to happen is that my employees are going to do it, and then the stumbling blocks are going to happen, which some would argue is exactly what needs to happen. We need to have more strikes so that we can put the onus back on the employer and say, no, you're going to help us. You're going to give us more of an even deal, right? As more of an even shake. And so this is why what's happening right now with the UAW is so pivotal. If the UAW fails or runs out of money in their support fund, because remember, striking workers for UAWs only get $500 a week. And that comes out of a pension, not a pension fund, a union fund that only has $835 million, which sounds like a lot of money until you have massive walkouts and strikes. And as they're targeting these individual plants, more and more people are walking out. However, the UAW president came up with a strategy like, hey, some of you are going to strike and some of you are going to stay at work, and then you're going to rotate out, because they know that he's going to run out of money. And so at this point, the factories are just in a waiting game with trying to see what they can do, and the UAW is trying to cause as much backup on bottlenecks that they affect enough dominoes, like the people who make parts for cars, that they affect enough dominoes to fall throughout the economy, that there's finally enough pressure on the car manufacturers to come to the table with something that's realistic. And that's what unions were designed to do before they lost their way. So I'm rooting for them. I really am. And I'm going to continue to watch this. Right now, they're still on strike. And of course, as Kodak pointed out, as I was gone, the writer strike ended. And, but I have sympathy for writers. I do, but I have more sympathy for auto workers. And you can agree with me or disagree with me. I don't really care. I guess I don't put that much value on entertainment, right? But I do put value on running our economy and having, and the auto workers, when everybody gets better deals. This is the thing, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to play a quick song, and we're going to go to our story. is that with the $15 minimum wage, everybody was upset because they don't think somebody should get $15 to flip burgers. Now, $15 is not making anybody rich, but it is putting them at the poverty level or above. And the assumption seems to be that $15 is an astronomical amount of money for somebody who doesn't really want to try. And I pointed out that, and I did a whole episode on this, and I will revive it, that some people can only flip burgers, you guys. Like, we can't all be attorneys, right? We can't all be doctors, right? And not to mention that when money comes into an economy, it's spent, the dollar is spent over and over again. And so when the lowest workers, and the UAW is not the lowest workers, but I'm talking about like your burger flippers, right? Air quotes, your burger flippers. When they get paid a living wage, it lifts the economy up overall from a monetary standpoint. So all your bullshit walks, okay? I don't care how you fucking feel about somebody getting $15 flipping a burger. What I'm telling you is that if you just look at the numbers, and numbers don't care how you feel, they're numbers. When you look at the numbers, it is good for the economy overall. So as these strikes are going on, assuming that the union is not going to go back to having greedy tendencies and that they will continue to fight for the employees, we could see that these pivotal strikes that are going on could end up helping push us further away from a potential recession. Everything is connected. Everything is connected. What happens to you happens to me. Okay? And that is going to lead us into our next story. So I am going to catch up on chat and I'm going to come back. And this is System of a Down, BYOB. So I am trying to catch up on chat, and I'm not trying to be Lemmy. Damn it. Did I say hi to you? That's who I was going to fucking say hi to. And we got Beyond the Bar in here. And Damien also popped in. Mr. Green, what's going on, babe? So, and I'm not saying this in like a trying to blow smoke up your ass. The comments are really, first of all, there's a lot of great stories in here, so I hope you guys are keeping up on the chat. But also, there's a lot of, what I like about the shows is there's a lot of discussion as far as, you know, what people say and, you know, just the talking stuff. And I love the chat because of the simple fact that I love hearing what you guys think. Now, Beyond is in my field as well, and he brought up a point which I'm going to have to touch on at another time. And I'm still trying to get through a lot of horror stories about being a nurse, and it is completely correct that we have people who are in the medical field that are leaving, as well as in the teaching profession, you guys. And that's a big deal for us, because as they're leaving those professions, what happens is that they are then going to have to fight to raise the salaries to get more people in the door, which is ultimately going to be passed on to you and I as a consumer. I'm not saying that it's bad. What I'm just telling you is that we're going to be the ones that are going to pay for it, because the C-suite executives are not going to cut the profit margins for the shareholders and for themselves with their stock options in order to be able to pay for the greater salaries. So it's a whole thing. So, all right. This story I'm about to talk about was one of the hardest ones for me to research. And the reason why is because when I have a topic, I know the terms to search. So when I go to search something, it's very easy for me to go, okay, I'm going to talk about this, and I know this terminology and how it's related to it, but I don't know what's going on with it. So it makes it a very easy search. This was the first story that I did that I had literally no idea about, was not on my radar. So before we get into the story, let me ask you questions. If you had a family heirloom, okay, that was a diamond, and it had been in your family for centuries, and you found out that it was a blood diamond, would you keep the diamond? Because technically the value of the diamond has not changed, but now the connection to that diamond has changed. Okay? If you were to buy a beautiful home in the South and you were to find out that it was a plantation home during slavery where tons of people were forced into servitude and tortured and not treated very kindly, would that change the value of your home? Okay? The British royal family, the bulk of the British royals family's money, not the bulk, I don't want to say that because I don't have a percentage on that, so I'm not going to qualify it in those terms. The royal family, the British royal family, made a ton of money off the slave trade. And when other countries had stopped at least transporting slaves, the British royal family was still doing it. Okay? Does that make the British royal family less fascinating or something less to be envied? If your family was starving and somebody gave your family crops that were taken off of land that was illegally confiscated from the rightful owner, and you used it to feed your family, is that okay? Right? So keep those examples in context, and we're going to get into a story. So first of all, I have a very dear friend who is Armenian, and she sent me some videos. One of them was by, and I know I'm saying his name wrong, Serge from SOD, and talking about something that has not been anywhere on my radar. And for you guys, I read all day. I'm reading at lunchtime. I'm reading in the morning when I wake up. I read all the way till I go to bed to see what's going on in the world, to see what's going on with money. That's what I do. I do not watch TV. I read. Had not heard anything about this and watched his video. Serge had a video that was about 7 minutes long. It's on IG. Of course, he is Armenian. And he was talking about a certain conflict that's going on currently right now, but it directly ties into finances. So we're going to get to that part. But I'm talking about a geographic location that I don't know, with words I really can't pronounce, that I had to go in and literally be like, okay, where is this country? How do I say this correctly? That means that as a white American girl, I'm going to be saying things not correct. So give me a break. All right. But the story is worth covering. Now, there is a strip of land that is Nagorno-Karabakh. Okay. And I'm going to have to say this like 1,000 times. So just know that this strip of land is Nagorno-Karabakh, according to how I looked up how to pronounce it correctly. And in this strip of land, on one side is Armenia and on one side is Azerbaijan. Okay. Now, at one time, both this whole region, Armenia and Azerbaijan and the Nagorno-Karabakh, was all under Russian control. All right. Now, we have talked about the Ukraine and the Russian conflict. And let's take this back to another story that I just talked about with the government shutdown. One of the sticking points is that the far right Republicans are, and not just all of them, but they're pushing back on the aid that is going to Ukraine. Now, again, let me remind you very quickly that giving aid to a country to a certain point is cheaper than going to war. Okay, so but the point is that Ukraine is now concerned that the aid and the weaponry that was coming from the United States is going to stop, and with good reason, right? So we have this strip of land, but this strip of land is technically recognized as owned by Azerbaijan. Okay. However, that strip of land, it's not a city and it's not a country. It's a strip of land, is populated by indigenous Armenians. All right. Now, Armenia and Azerbaijan have been fighting over this land for a long time. And in 2020, I believe, in that conflict, we had Turkey come in, and Turkey provided weapons to Azerbaijan to push Armenia back. And that is when it became recognized as part of, by the united community, as this strip of land is a part of Azerbaijan, even though it is actually populated by Armenians, okay? I'm going to get to why this is important to you, all right? What has happened is that in December, so we had the Ukraine conflict start in February, years ago. In December of this year, since they are in a mountainous region, Azerbaijan has blocked off the roads to to the strip of land, and I'm going to have to keep looking at it because I want to make sure I keep saying it right. Nagorno-Karabakh. Okay. Again, white girl, right? Doing the best I can. Nagorno-Karabakh. They blocked off the road to it, and they limited food and they limited medical supplies to them. So they were weakening the population. Then they came in and they basically did a violent takeover. And what we saw was a massive exodus of the Armenian population, most of them going to Armenia, who is now trying to take on a massive amount of population. Now, Russia, whenever it's convenient for them, they will be an ally to Armenia and they will be an ally to Azerbaijan. The major conflict that happened in 2020, Russia was able to broker, I'm doing air quotes, nobody can see me, broker a deal. And what ended up happening is they put peace troops into Azerbaijan. Now, you remember Wagner, the group that the guy who read it or who ran it, and I can't say his name correctly, but did tried to overthrow Russia, and he was on his way to Russia, and then they stopped, and as soon as they stopped, I was like, you're dead. And then sure enough, he died in a airplane accident along with 11 other people. These are some of the Russian peacekeeping troops that we see go into these locations, where if Russia wants to put an arm's length between themselves and somebody else, they would use a group like Wagner to say, hey, it's not us, it's Wagner, even though Wagner was directly working for the Kremlin, right? So Russian peace troops came in to Azerbaijan. But remember that Putin is trying to reunite Russia in the sense where, like with the Ukraine thing, where he's saying like, oh, this was really ours. So when I look at this, my concern is with Putin moving into this space is the fact that it's only a matter of time, if in the event that Ukraine falls, that I would assume that Putin would then go after Azerbaijan and Armenia. And right next to all of these places is Turkey. Okay. Now, Turkey is a pseudo-ally of Russia, and they were involved in brokering the Black Sea grain deal, which collapsed and which has now put Europe in turmoil more so on food insecurities, okay? Because most of the food over in Eastern Europe came from Russia and Ukraine, but they bombed the shit out of Ukraine, so the farmland is fucked, and then Russia is sending people to fight, so there's less production that's coming out. Then the grain deal fell through for what was being produced, and now it's an entire shit show. So we have all of these moving parts that are currently going on. And they have been asking, Nagorno-Karabakh has been asking to be recognized as its own country, its own independent state, and the UN has not done anything. When Azerbaijan moved into this strip of land, they have killed and tortured people. And we know that because it's on Telegram, because they've posted it, because they're showing us the acts that they are doing to the people of the Nagorno-Karabakh, what they're doing. They're posting it. And it's like one of those things where people are like, oh, the Holocaust didn't happen. I'm like, really? You don't see all those fucking photos? You don't see all those dead, emaciated bodies piled up? You're still going to say the Holocaust doesn't exist? Fuck you. Right? You don't believe your own eyes? Like you're so wrapped up that somebody's trying to deceive you that you can't believe that? Come on. Right? And so it's there. So we know that it's happening. Now what's happening is Armenia is trying to process all of these refugees and get them into a system to try to find them housing, to try to find them different places. And we saw this exact thing happen when we had a lot of the refugees coming out of Africa hitting onto Greece and onto the very tips of the European Union, and how they were trying to process all of those people. So what's happening is that when we have humanitarian crises, we think that they don't affect us because they're really far away, but everything is connected. We're in a global economy now, all right? And so the thing is that we have the UN came in, or actually, you know what, let me put a pin in that. Let me tell you why this is important to you. And this goes back to my original question that I was asking you. Azerbaijan, depending on what you read, does or doesn't supply some oil to the United States. Now, let me take you back to 2008 real quick, because this is very important. Different countries have different oil surpluses. All right. So the United States has certain oil they're sitting on. The Middle East has certain oil they're sitting on. And depending on how hard it is to pull it out of the ground, depends on how expensive it is. All right. So when we were going into the crash of 2008, Brazil was a big oil producing country, but they were pulling it primarily from off-sea drilling, which is extremely expensive. So when 2008 happened, it priced them completely out of the market. All right. Because it was very expensive. Then we had the rise in America of shale oil, because it was a cheaper way to pull oil out of the ground. The reason why the Middle East is so profitable is because their surplus is giant, but on top of it, it's very cheap and easy to pull out of the ground. Okay. Russia is a heavy commodity country. I've talked about this. Commodity is something that's the same anywhere you buy it. They were massive exporters of oil. When they invaded Ukraine, the global community, at least the West and Europe, got together and said, we're not buying your oil because we know that that is a direct funding of your war. And what happened is that Russia had to get money in the door. And so they started discounting their oil. And we saw that the two big primary picker-uppers of that oil was China and India. Okay. India has a massive population, so does China, and they are looking out for their country first. Whether you agree with it or not, it is what it is. But there are other countries who are still buying Russian oil at a discount because for the most part, the global economy has turned away from Russia and Russian oil. Okay. So what we find that now Azerbaijan, and by default, the United States and other allies in Europe, are being accused of buying oil from Azerbaijan that is Russian oil in disguise. So this is the question I asked at the beginning of this story about a blood diamond. If you find out that your family heirloom is a blood diamond, does that make it any less valuable? Right? Because technically it doesn't. So if you're Europe and you're trying to heat your house, which is predominantly with their infrastructure reliant on oil, and you have seen energy go up 500% already in some areas of Europe, are you not more apt to turn a blind eye, even if the fact that the oil that you're buying from Azerbaijan, is probably almost 100% certainly Russian oil, which means in a indirect way, you are supporting the war that you're fighting against. So we had sanctions that came in against Russia, financial sanctions, okay? And they removed Russia out of the banking system, which is more an act of convenience and being able to move around money. And on top of that, we had the possession of all of the oligarchs, where we took possession of their yachts, which are costing tons and tons of money for them to be sitting in our harbors right now, to the tune of, I don't have the exact number, so I'm not going to even guess, but I did a whole show on this. All right. And then we had the different countries come in and say, hey, man, we're not buying Russian oil. And the United States is one of them. So what the uproar is going on right now, and why this is something to watch, is the fact that strip of land, Nagorno-Karabakh, is now deserted. We have Armenians that have been tortured and killed that have now fled to Armenia. And we have an alliance, a stronger alliance, because it's suiting Russia at this time, forming with Russia and Azerbaijan. And then we have Russia selling oil to Azerbaijan, where, like with China and India, they're like, yeah, we're going to buy the fuck out of Russian oil, right? Azerbaijan hasn't said that they're not, but they're also not prohibited from buying it. So they're buying it, and Europe can say with a blind eye, hey, it's okay. We need the oil, and we're not buying it from Russia. We're buying it from Azerbaijan. And the reason why they know it's coming from Russia is because anytime you have oil that comes out of the ground, you have to take care of your population, and then you have to have extra oil to sell. So Azerbaijan said, hey, look, we have this oil, and it's going to cover all of us stuff. Plus, we're going to export even more oil. Well, there's not really any way they can cover that spread unless they're importing oil from somebody else. And Russian oil is at a discount right now. So if you're Azerbaijan, who has the formation of a dictatorship coming in, aligning with Russia, being able to buy Russian oil at a discount, deep discount, being able to resell it to Europe and make a profit and continue to attack these people that are in this area, then what you have is you have a round robin that is funding the war while saying you're not funding the war. And this is the war in Ukraine, and this is also the genocide that's happening to the Armenians. Do you guys feel what I'm saying? And so this becomes a big deal and something to watch. And I don't know if I did all of it justice, but what I will tell you guys is that I did not know this was a story. I did not know this was happening. I did not know. So even if you feel distance from Armenia and the Armenians, and you don't have the the brother's keeper mentality, my question comes back to this. If you are in Europe and you need oil and you've been hit by higher food prices from the conflict between the war that Putin has started on Ukraine, plus the falling out of the Black Sea grain deal, which I've covered on here, and at the same time, you're having utility prices go up by 500%, and you can get your hands on cheap oil that is Russian oil coming from Azerbaijan that says it's not Russian oil, but you can help alleviate some of the issues to your pocketbook, along with helping try to lessen the impact of inflation on you, because United States is not the only country experiencing inflation. All over the globe, it is global inflation right now. So you have all of these things coming against you. So the thing is that does it make you wrong to purchase that oil? Like, at what point are you your brother's keeper, right? Or at what point is it like, hey, I gotta heat my house, and we see this continuation where the governments continue to turn a blind eye. So I'm going to play a quick song, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to finish this topic out. And there's a whole bunch of stuff I see that's coming up in chat that I got to get caught up on. And so here is some AC/DC Walk All Over You, and I'm going to get caught up on chat and come back, and we're going to continue this discussion and start wrapping it up. So we got some Armenians in the house. I had no idea. Apparently, Kodak, who had to jump to his show, apparently he alluded to the fact that he is Armenian. And Naz just said she's half Armenian. And my girl Anya is in the house. And yes, so Nagorno-Karabakh is also Artsakh, which again, Arts, I have it like spelled out. These words are very hard for me to pronounce, and I do not mean any disrespect. I am a white girl in the United States, so I am doing my absolute best. And for some reason, Nagorno-Karabakh seemed easier for me to pronounce than Artsakh, which again, I'm still pronouncing incorrect. Joe came by. What's going on, Joe? Alien came by. I already shouted out SoCal. So that's actually super cool that we have some Armenian. Oh, shit. Alien is part Armenian. Look at that, man. Fucking Armenians in the house today. What's going on? So we have been talking about what has been going on with Azerbaijan buying Russian oil at a deep discount, selling it to Europe, and making a profit to prop up a government that is very Putin-leaning. And Russia is getting more and more in cahoots with that area. And again, remember that those areas were once under Russian control before the USSR basically collapsed. And then there was a certain law that was passed, and I can't remember what it is now, but anyway, changed things. And so this area of Nagorno-Karabakh has been trying to get the UN's attention to be recognized as an independent state. So this is directly off of the UN's website. The UN says that its job is the United Nations is an international organization founded in 1945 with the primary purpose of promoting peace, security, cooperation, and diplomatic relations among nations. It was established after World War II to prevent further conflicts and to provide a platform for countries to work together on various global issues here. And then it lists purposes, which I didn't write down because I just want to give you guys what the UN is supposed to do. Now, we have different countries that broker different deals. So the Black Sea grain deal, before it fell apart after a year, was brokered by the UN and Russia and Ukraine and Turkey. Okay, so Russia is providing its services to continue to broker deals in between these countries, which of course is inevitably ending up to working for the best cause for the Russians, just like in the Black Sea grain deal. Turkey was one of the main receivers from that grain. And of course, there's no doubt in my brain that Russia has not backdoored a deal with Turkey and with China and with other Putin sympathizers who to be able to still get them their grain. But that has nothing to do with us, right? But when we're talking about something like this, where we're talking about a genocide of people, we're talking about something that does directly affect the allies who have sanctioned Russia in an attempt to prevent the growing conflict to funding the conflict. And again, remember, I'm going to remind you again, and I'm going to keep reminding it to you, it is cheaper for us to give aid to a country who is currently in war and old weaponry than to go into the war ourselves. Okay? Now, the UN, they had kept telling the UN, you need to come, you need to come, you need to come. Well, UN came. I think it was earlier this week, if I'm remembering all of my research. And I have all the links. If you guys want to know all of the research I did, feel free to email me at mel@finances, the other F word. By the way, I didn't even introduce myself again. My name is Mel O. I'm a certified financial planner, licensed financial advisor, host of the show, host of the podcast Finances, the other F word, author of the book Finances, the other F word, another F word to love, and host of the show Money and Metals, 6 a.m. Pacific time, Wednesdays and Fridays. So the UN came and they visited this area, and they said, we have no signs of violence at all. Nothing, right? And what Azerbaijan is saying is, oh, hey, they fled. They fled. We weren't violent at all. They fled. And UN is going, yep, that's what we see. We see that there's been absolutely no violence, so we're going to wrap up our investigation, and we're going to fuck off over here, right? And the thing is that you can go to social media and see it. So what the fuck, right? And this is the crux that we're going to find ourselves in. And the longer that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine goes on, the more Russia is going to be finding other and I don't want to say Russia, Putin is going to be finding other pseudo countries where he is going to be able to funnel his oil through, that they're going to be able to sell to the European countries to make profit, to continue violent acts to push their own personal agenda, a lot of times resulting in genocide of people. And so I go back to my original question, and Iha pointed out that a lot of weddings take place at plantations right now, right? So at what point does the UN, at what point does the European Union, at what point does the United States get involved? And everybody says, we're not the world police, but then everybody says we need to be the world police, right? So it depends on what it is you're arguing. If we flip-flop on that back and forth, right? So at what point does the United States have an obligation to step in and go, not cool, not cool, we're not okay with this? At what point does Europe step in and go, okay, we're not going to buy that oil anymore? Or do they? Because, again, they need oil. Their infrastructure is built around oil. And we are, for the most part, oil independent here. Everybody says we're not oil independent here in the United States, but we are. We are. We can produce enough oil to cover our citizens' use. We can, right? I did a whole show on it. But it is cheaper in most cases to import it from other countries who are, and that means that the United States has potentially bought Russian oil as well, because it's an open marketplace. So if you can pull it out of the ground at $100 a barrel here in the United States, or you can buy it from a country like Azerbaijan at $75 a barrel, it makes more sense in that context fiscally as the United States to import that oil than to dig it out of our own ground. You guys feel what I'm saying? And this is what perpetuates this situation. And so is it possible that the United States has purchased oil from Azerbaijan? Yes, it absolutely is. And other countries that are really disguised as Russian oil. But when I tried to get a very specific answer to the question of, are we, as the United States, importing oil from Azerbaijan, the data was all over the place. And I'm like, okay, let me just shelf that for now. because I don't know who to trust, and I don't like talking about numbers unless I know to trust them. But I will tell you from a fiscal standpoint, again, if with everything going on in the economy, if we can pull it out of the ground at 100 versus buying it from another country, and remember that the price of oil is driven by OPEC and OPEC Plus, because those are the major players. And OPEC Plus, Russia is a member of OPEC Plus. So it doesn't matter how you feel about Biden, doesn't matter how you feel about Trump, that is not how oil works. So the thing is that it would be more conducive for the United States to purchase from other countries that are having genocide, to purchase cheaper oil, to keep it in the ground for us, not pay the thing, and still cover all of our citizens. Do you guys feel what I'm saying right now? Right? So I am going to here real quickly, I'm going to play a very quick song. And then I'm going to come back because I need to catch up on chat to make sure that there's anything else. But then I'm going to be wrapping up. And I really hope I did the best I could on this, because when I go into a story, like I said, normally I know what to search, so I can know the terms to research. But this was like, I don't know any of this. I haven't heard anything about this. I've never even heard of Azerbaijan ever in my life. I have never heard of the strip of land, Nagorno-Karabakh. Never heard of it in my life. Did not know that there was genocide going on. Did not know that inadvertently or purposely the European Union and potentially the USA was buying cheaper Russian oil to continue to fund their conflict, which then we as the United States set aside money to send to Ukraine to fight Russia. And around we go. Right? So let me play this very short song, and then let me come back and see if there's anybody that has anything to say. But I hope I did my best, because this took hours to research, because I wanted to get the pronunciation and the understanding of it as best I can, because I've never heard of this, because the media is not reporting it, which was the reason why Anya asked that I talk about it. And so here is Souls of Black by Testament. I love this fucking song. Great fucking song. So hopefully you guys have seen how all of these songs that I've played have tied into the topics that I've discussed today. So a lot of you guys are joining me, but we're getting ready to sign off. What's up, Dark Goat Lord? I don't think I said hi to you. Felipa, what's going on? How are you doing? I know I said hi to SoCal and Eha, Poker Shadow. Leslie had to dash. Naz, I'm so glad that you listened to Hear and Aid. Stars, if you guys missed my net worth show yesterday at 4 p.m., I talked about We Are the World and segued that into a conversation about Hear in Aid Stars, which a lot of you guys might remember it. And I found out a lot of my friends on AMP are Armenian. And that's pretty awesome. So we talked about the government shutdown. We talked about the ousting of the House Republican seat of McCarthy and how that's going to cause turmoil for both Democrats and Republicans down the road, even though Democrats voted 100% for it. And we also talked about the UAW strike, and we talked about the current civil lawsuit that is going on with Trump and why that matters for our pocketbook if it is done on a greater scale, which it was in 2008. So we don't even have to make this hypothetical. This is fucking true, right? Like, it happened. We saw it. And our last story was on the conflict that is going on Nagorno-Karabakh with Azerbaijan and between Armenia. And as Russia continues to find outlets for their oil, then we will see a lot of the would-be countries that really don't have a pot to piss in, that have dictatorships that align more with Putin's ideology. And we see that with China, right? We see all of that happening. We see that this will continue to give them an outlet to sell to Europe and potentially the United States cheaper oil while still making a profit to fund their violent acts. And so this is something that we need to watch. This is something that we need to be aware of. I don't have an answer to this, all right? I don't know what the answer is to this, but I thank Anya for bringing this to my attention, because she's like, Mel, the media is not reporting on this. And I'm like, yeah, I had no idea what this was. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I know this show ran a little longer than normal. And okay, so That's That's great. Goat Lord remembers stars. And yes, we all want to touch a rainbow is in there. So I appreciate you guys for hanging out with me. I appreciate Anya for bringing this to my attention. I know this was a little bit longer show than normal. I don't know what I'm going to be talking about Friday, but I will be back for Money and Metal at 6 a.m. Pacific time. And then tonight at 4 o'clock, Mr. Green and I, as part of Ampoween, will be discussing Treehouse of Horrors by The Simpsons, because I love me some motherfucking Simpsons. You're welcome, SoCal. Thank you, Iha. Thank you, Dream, for the compliment. Thank you, Philippa. I know I'm probably not saying that right. I apologize. I appreciate you guys for showing up. I'll see you Friday morning. No, I'll see you today at 4, but then I'll see you Friday on Mr. Green's channel, but I'll see you Friday morning back for Money and Metal. And now that I know about the Armenian situation, I will be keeping an eye on it to see what other countries start aligning with it, who start seeing what they're doing with the Russian oil and then start repeating the pattern, and how long it goes on before Europe and the United States have to make a different decision. So with that, Amp, I will see you back Friday morning at 6 a.m. and I am out this bitch.
Thanks for listening. If you like us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.